SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
While traveling along the roads of North Mississippi, be sure to spot the Oil Drop logo for your next stop. All Dee's Oil locations are locally owned and operated. Dee's Oil, where there's quality in every tank.
It's time for True American Heroes, For the Record, with Jack Rutland. Another exclusive on SuperTalk Mississippi 102.1 FM. Many of our heroes have taken their stories with them to the grave. But this show is about the stories and personal experiences of these veterans.
Today we're honored to have with us Mr. Cecil Rhodes, a longtime part of our community here in Brookhaven, Lincoln County, and he's been very gracious to come in and share with us some of his experiences back in the 40s and the youth of his life. So, Mr. Cecil, I want to say thank you for your willingness to come in and share some of these stories, and we're going to get right to it. So back prior to the start of World War II, were you still in school when Pearl Harbor was bombed, or were you out of school and already working?
No, when the war broke out, I was teaching school.
Really?
I had 3 years in college. War was coming on. My father was out of money. So one of the neighbors was principal of a 4-room school in between Neshoba and Winston County, and I got a job there making $56 a month.
Good for you.
And I was there when the war broke up, when Pearl Harbor, when the bombing was. And the bombing was Sunday, Monday, we found out the boys bumming. That's how far back in Neshoba County I was.
So now, all right, did you enlist, or were you drafted,
No.
or what happened?
I was drafted, registered in February of 42, was drafted in September of 42. No, I just waited till they needed me.
Now, you were just mentioning the bombing of Pearl Harbor when the attack took place. Do you remember where you were, and do you remember the effect that it might have had on you, or what your emotions were at that point?
Well, I remember where, what had happened, but I don't know, I do not recall any unusual effect, because a great deal had been said about the war. We were preparing for it, and I do not recall any being upset or emotional or any unusual thing about that. And I don't recall that, though.
Okay, so you ended up in the Army then?
Yes,
And tell me a little bit about your training, and I know you ended up in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit of a background on that.
As I said, I was drafted in September 42, Camp Shelby, troop trained to Camp Crowder, Missouri, Signal Corps camp. Got my basic training there. Camp Crowder is near Branson, and now you can be there in 10 hours. It took us 2 days on a troop train to get there. And the railroad came within a half a mile of my house where I lived. We troop trains on that. And spent 3 months at Camp Crowder. January of 43, after the training. And Camp Crowder, it was not an infantry training, but we had a lot of hiking and Army regulations, and had a little gas chamber we had to go. We had a lot of the training that the infantry get, not all of it, but a lot of it. And then in January 43, was shipped to the West Coast and assigned to the 328th Fighter Group.
So you went to the West Coast?
Yes,
Now tell us what happened at that point. When were you shipped overseas?
Well, we stayed, but first base was on the West Coast was at Hammer Field at Fresno. From there was transferred to Hamilton Field, which is near San Rafael, maybe like 10 or 12 miles north of San Francisco. And we stayed there 8 or 10 months, was transferred up to Santa Rosa, and was still in the 328th there. And then this was a replacement outfit. They had people coming and going all the time. And then in December, I believe, of 43, orders came through that they needed 3 people. One is in my classification. We were transferred to Glendale, from Glendale to a little airstrip of Lomita, from there to Santa Maria, and from Santa Maria, all of this was preparation to go overseas. And then from Santa Maria, we put on, shipped out to Camp Kilmer, from there to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. Troop train. Took us about 4 days, I think, from the West Coast to get there.
After they sent you to the West Coast, then they decided they wanted you on the East Coast, so you had to go over there, then come back, and it sounds like the Army.
That's just typical. It's typical.
So you caught a ship, and on the East Coast headed for
England. We landed in Scotland. The first, I do not recall the exact date. It was either the 1st or 2nd of May in 44 that we boarded a troop ship in the harbor of New York, sailed that night, and it took us about 12, 13 days to get there. We landed in Scotland, and then from there we went down to the base near Ipswich, England. It was an old RAF base.
RAF meaning Royal Air Force.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And we stayed there about a year and a half. We did not leave. We didn't cross the channel. We stayed there. It was in a fighter outfit.
So you were part of a group that was assigned to this old RAF base.
Yes.
And your aircraft were what type?
The pilots flew P-51s. When we got there, they flew 38s. Well, let me back up a little bit. When it was on the West Coast, they trained in P-39s as Bell aircraft, tricycle landing gear, but I don't think they used that plane in Europe at all. But then when we got to England, the pilots were flying 38s, but that plane didn't pan out too good. I don't know, it just wasn't good. Then they assigned the pilots P-51s, and those fellows liked that.
Now, the P-51, for those who may not know, and you can share a little bit about this, about the P-51 with us, it made a tremendous difference to the B-17s and the B-24 pilots because of their ability to do long-range escort.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the P-51 and the guys in your unit.
Yeah, well, I knew them as pilots. I did not know any of them personally. Now, the one that their crew chief, he was a man that they depended upon to make sure that plane would fly. They didn't have a miss in it or anything. Now, they got to be real close, the crew chief. And I didn't work on the line. I was not a mechanic. I worked in the oiler room. I was what they call a statistician. I kept with the records. But they liked the P-51. They could maneuver it much better. The guns, 2 bombs on one on either wing, and at one time the fighter planes did not have the fuel to escort the bombers all the way to the target, especially when they were going deep with the oil refineries, the ball bearing ammunition plants. But after later on, the 47s and the 51s, they were able to escort them over the target. Of course, they didn't leave the bombers were probably in the air 2 hours before the fighters left the ground, because it didn't take them as long to get there. And we were told that when they got to the target, if there was flak, the fighters would leave because they knew the Germans weren't going to send up planes if there's flak artillery. And the fighters then would go ahead and look for railroads, bridges, roads, and they did drop their bombs. But if it was not flak, they would stay with them till they dropped their bums, get them back close to the channel, then they would do their bumming or strafing, whatever that they planned to do. Now, what I'm telling you is what I heard, because I was not actively involved in that, you know.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
You did what the Army assigned you to, and of course they get on me about it. But I told them, I said, Bill Clinton didn't start this "don't ask, don't tell" because I didn't ask them why they sent me to the Air Force, and I didn't tell them I wasn't going.
Well, this is really interesting. We have with us today Mr. Cecil Rhodes, a veteran of World War II, who's been gracious enough to come in and share some of his experiences. Tell me, Mr. Cecil, you know, I'm sure it was an experience for an old country boy from Mississippi to end up over in England. I guess you just had to adapt. You were given a job and you just did your job. Just like you said, you weren't asking what you could, you didn't volunteer. You probably were said, here's what you're going to do. What was it like being a boy from Mississippi all of a sudden on the other side of the world in a land you probably thought you'd never see?
No, because I'd never been out of the front yard before I left. There's one thing that I appreciate the American flag. We arrived at the base at night. The next morning, that group headquarters, I saw Old Glory. That flag meant more to me that day than it has ever meant. It just said something that I cannot put in words. But as I said, as I told you, it was mostly a statistician. But I had various jobs. One interesting thing, I taught school 1 year before I went up there. The special service officer had gathered a group that they were drafted. They did not have a lot of education, so he was going to school them. He had 22 in the class. He found out that I'd taught. He was going on leave, so he wanted me to come up and teach his class while he was gone. He had 22 when he left. When he got back, he had 7. They didn't graduate. They just didn't go to school.
They didn't want to come back to class. Well, we're back. Today we have Mr. Cecil Rhodes, a longtime part of the community here in Lincoln County and Brookhaven, sharing his experiences with us as we talk about honoring our veterans and the Military Memorial Museum celebration we're going to be having here in a little while. But Mr. Cecil, you were talking about you taught school for a year, and you were talking about how much you made. Can you go back to that and compare that to the military a little bit, if your pay went up or down?
Well, school teaching at that time, $56 a month. The lady I was boarding with charged me $12 a month for board. She had an old cow. She told me if I'd milk that cow, she'd knock off $1 a month, so I paid her $11 for board.
That included meals?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's a deal.
I guess laundry, I'm not sure. We didn't know what laundry was. You washed in the tub. We didn't have dryers and all that thing.
Well, what about in the military? What about your pay scale during your time overseas?
Well, we started off as a private at $50 a month, as I said, at Camp Crowder, Missouri, as a book private. And one thing I didn't mention, but on the first inspection we had, I think they tried to make an example out of the rookies there. Your clothes had to be in exact order. The ODs, the raincoat, the fatigues, the khakis, everything in order. And when the inspecting officer came in, one button on one sleeve wasn't buttoned. He said, go to the order room. And the order room was full of people that had been sent down there. They just make an example out of us. And good old me, it was crowded. I backed up there and put one foot on the wall. That was the cardinal sin. The first sergeant looked over. He said, you report for KP in the morning. That's the first experience I had with KP. That goes back from
interesting.
Then, yeah.
Really interesting.
But that didn't connect with the school teaching. But I took a $6 a month cut from I left teaching to school teaching because I was getting $56. But the Army fed me, clothed me, medicine, all that. So I really got a raise in going there.
You did all right.
Yeah.
Now, you were overseas until the war ended. Is that correct?
Yes. We got there about 3 weeks before the invasion. We left New York somewhere around the 1st of May, 44. Took us about 12, 13 days to get there. Landed in Scotland, as I said. And somewhere around the middle of May we were there, and the invasion was 6th of June.
Right.
And as I said, I worked in the orderly room, basically. Was mail clerk one time, school teacher one time, help dig an emplacement for that aircraft gun, which was never put in there. But the invasion, they started landing those fellas after midnight, and we did not know until noon that day, and we were, maybe like 130, 40 miles from Normandy, and we did not know the invasion is on until noon. We knew there was an unusual number of planes in the sky that morning. Of course, that wasn't unusual. I mean, the sky was full of planes, but about noon, somebody came through our room and said, the invasion's on. Now that's, I guess, how secret it was. Of course, the world knew it. Another thing that was rather interesting, when we got there, even though we was in England, I could not tell my folks I could put ETO, European. Then
and the ETO meant European Theater of Operations.
That's right. Then we had not been there very long until the Boys in Communications had a little shortwave radio, and at night we'd go down and listen to Axis Alley, propaganda later. And we hadn't been there 3 weeks, so she said, "Welcome to England, 479th Fighter Group." I couldn't tell my folks where we were, but she welcomed us, and she had a lot of things that she said. That old gal was something else. I think a graduate of Princeton University. I believe she's an American citizen.
My goodness.
But we'd listen to that, and
so you were talking about your statistics, your job in the orderly room. What kind of statistics did you keep up with?
Every soldier had what they call a 201 file. If he was promoted, if he received an honor of some type, or if group headquarters, somebody called down and said how many people you have in a category. We didn't have computers then. I had a little arrow I could point through the file cabinet. They had them notched and they'd drop out. Like they wanted to know how many mechanics we had. Then I could tell them how many mechanics we had, how many communications, armament, transportation, whatever it is. I'd keep up. Then if he got a promotion, I'd make a record of that, or if his own detached service, or whatever happened to him. It was just kind of a personal record that.
So you were keeping records, literally.
Yeah, and they talked about what an easy job I had. Right now, they'd appreciate some of that if they went back, to see what they had. Well, things like that, you recorded.
Now, I'm looking at your baseball cap that you wore into the studio this morning, and I see on there that there's a ribbon. And what kind of ribbon is that, Mr. Cecil?
That's a good conduct ribbon. I was a good soldier.
Now, wait a minute. Whose ribbon is that? Is that actually yours, Mr. Cecil?
It took me 3 years to get it.
Well, now, let me ask you this. Do you know how long you were actually in Europe before the war ended?
Yeah, well, our outfit stayed. We were there a year and a half. When the war was over, in May the 8th in Germany, our outfit was supposed to go into the Pacific. They packed up, crated up everything we had, shipped that out. We were just sitting there waiting. I had never played cribbage in my life, but I learned to play cribbage, whatever that little card game is. You put pegs on something.
Right.
But we didn't have a thing to do. We were just there. We did a little more of that. The ones that wanted to go over Germany, they would fly you over there for one day.
Really?
And we had to do some hiking and something, but basically we were just waiting. We did not know that they were dealing with drop the atomic bomb. That's what kept us from going to the Pacific.
So as far as you guys knew, you had a whole lot more war ahead of you.
Oh yeah, and when the eventually my mother passed away while I was over there, and the Red Cross had trouble getting to me because they kept telling the Red Cross, "You're on your way home," and we're supposed to be, but you know how the Army operates. They just wait. So they finally transferred me out of the 434th Fighter Squadron up to a base somewhere in England. Was going to fly me home. Got up there, they said, "No, the weather's closed in. We're not flying anybody." So then they sent me to Southampton, England, and on our jacket they had a little emblem of two Mustangs, that fighter plane, that was a Mustang. And when I walked to whoever was there said, "Oh, your outfit's already here." And I did not know that my outfit was on this aircraft carrier. When I walked on, they had some bad language to me, thought I was already home, you know.
Well, Mr. Cecil, this is pretty incredible hearing you share your experiences like this. You know, and I can only think what it must have been like for you to see your country suddenly be caught up in this massive world war, and to be a part of that, and to do things that you never anticipated, go places you never thought you'd go. It had to have had an impact on your life to spend 2 or 3 years of your life serving your country. And I know it's a ridiculous question, but if you had to do all over again, would you do it again?
I sure would. It was an honor for me to serve my country. One thing that maturity. I had 3 years in college. I would have been better off to have waited till I got back to go to school. I realized more the value of studying. That last year at Mississippi College was more meaningful. Before then, I thought, well, all you got to do is get a degree. But then there's more to it than just getting a degree. And it matured me a great deal. But it was an honor for me. I don't know, I would have been hurt if they had turned me down. As I said, all of my buddies, by July 42, they were gone. People said, "You 4F, you draft dodger?" I got tired of that because my first notice from the draft board, I was an alternate. I went up there and I said, "Look, y'all going to change that. I'm going. I'm tired of this 4F and draft dodger business that they was putting on me, you know." But no, it was an honor. I had 3 brothers. We all served. One went to the field artillery. I was in the Air Force, 1 Armored Division. The youngest was in the infantry, and he was killed in France. But look, you don't hear a thing about the people that stayed here. People that stayed here sacrificed.
Sure.
It was a lot of things they couldn't get. So this thing was a two-way deal. Though we was away from home a lot, but there was a sacrifice.
A lot of sacrifices
But
for
people
a lot of people.
stayed, yeah, sure.
Well, you just shared something that I've known you a long time, Mr. Cecil, and we've been good friends. But I've never heard you mention the fact that you lost a brother in the war. Now, you lost a brother, and he was in the infantry, and it happened in France. Incredible. Incredible, my friend. Well, we have been honored today to have Mr. Cecil Rhodes, a long-time member of this community and a good friend of mine. And it's been an honor for us to have you come in and share these experiences of your service to your country in World War II. And, you know, I always enjoy seeing the vets around Brookhaven. And Mr. Cecil is one of those that considers it's an honor to wear a baseball cap that says either Greatest Generation or World War II vet. And I always am honored to see you and be able to shake your hand and say thank you for your service. And again, on behalf of this community and our country, thank you, Mr. Cecil, for your service at a time when we really needed all of our finest young men.
Appreciate the opportunity of coming. You asked me a question about my brother. He was 20 years old. The second day of August, was killed the second day of September. He lived 1 month in his 20th year.
Incredible. Ultimate sacrifice. Thank you so much again, my good friend.
Thank you.
What was it like being a boy from Mississippi all of a sudden on the other side of the world in a land you probably not thought you'd never see?
There's one thing that I appreciate the American flag. We arrived at the base at night. The next morning at group headquarters, I saw Old Glory. That flag meant more to me that day than it has ever meant. It just said something that I cannot put in words.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.